So in this video, I'm just going to give you an introduction to Relay 360. Relay 360 is a CRM system. It's a system where you'll store all details of your client files, all of your company files, details of your policies, and your accounts work, as well as documentation and a variety of notes that you might want to leave on a customer's file. This is the home page. This is the page you'll see when you first log on to Relay 360. Just the first section I'd give your attention to is the search section up the top left hand corner. This is basically how you will find clients in the system. You can see at the moment it defaults to client code as a means of finding a client, and that's certainly the best way to find a customer, because every customer in Relay has their own unique client code. So just bring your attention to here on the left hand side, you'll see the relevant client code for the corresponding clients on the right. The client codes are usually in the format of the first three letters of the surname, followed by the first letter of the forename, and then a number. However, it is possible to change the format of a client code if you contact our customer service team. So it does default to client code as standard, but if I click on this drop down menu just here beside it, you'll see you have other options such as name, address, telephone, date of birth, etc. So whilst it is possible to find customers in other ways, as I said, client code is the best way to do it. So if I just type in a client code here as an example and click search, the system will bring me directly into this particular client file, which is Barry Jones. To come back out of a client file, just click the exit button and you're back. If you don't know the client code, you could just basically put in a name. So again, you could put in full name or a surname. So if I just put in blogs here as an example, and then select name as the search criteria and search, it brings me up everybody in my database who has blogs either as a surname or as a forename. Also, again, if I only know, say, an address, then I can put in the address, select address, and search, and again it'll bring me up everybody on my system who has that particular address. After you do a search in Relay, always remember to click the reset button just to refresh the system. So that's the search function here. This page here, or this in the main screen here, is just basically your results. So every time you do results for, say, a name or address, the results will be stored here. Whilst it's not in use, it essentially just displays all of the clients who are in your database in alphabetical order. Note that in the bottom half of the screen here, you do have options, viewing options. So in terms of what you will see when you do a search. So you can see here at the moment it says exclude. So if you want to exclude certain things, so for example, if you didn't want to see the phone number here, you could just untick phone or tick phone, and basically the phone numbers will be gone. Likewise for date of birth, if you want to just get rid of the date of birth, just tick there. So they're basically just viewing options that you have available to you. Also on the right hand side here, if you want to scroll down, so if you've put in a surname that has numerous results, you can click these buttons here to move up and down the screen. Again, this shouldn't really be necessary. The best way to find a client is by the client code, which would save you all this hassle. But if you don't know their client code, then that's how you should do it. In terms of the bottom half of the screen, you'll see here there's new quotations. There's 3 buttons for home, motor, and van. These are our personal lines quick launch buttons. So if you want to do a motor quote or a home quote or a van quote, this is basically these are the buttons that you would use to start the process. The good thing about these buttons is that when you click on motor, for example, the system will actually look for a name and a date of birth. It'll actually check if the customer is on the database already. If they are, it'll give you the opportunity to store a quote within that file. Alternatively, you can click on a new client and continue on with the process. And what happens is the system will actually create a new client file for your customer, and it'll store the quote that you subsequently do in that client file. So the motor and the home and the van quick launch buttons are recommended because they speed up the process. On the right hand side here, we have new, which is a button that actually allows you to create a new company on Relay. So if you click client as a firm, it allows you to put in the details of the company and load them up. So if you want to deal with a company on Relay and they're not already on your system, The new button is what I would recommend, but remember to tick client as a firm so the system knows it is a company. If you select any of these results here and click details, it'll give you some more information on that particular client. Quick load. Quick load is a fast way of creating a personal lines customer on Relay. Again, you shouldn't use this too frequently because the motor quick launch and the van and home quick launch buttons should complete this purpose or fulfill the same purpose. But say, for example, you're dealing with a new customer and they bought travel insurance or something like that, or gadget insurance or pet insurance, and you want to load the details up onto Relay, well then the quick launch button is what I would use. You could also use the new button, but the good thing about the quick launch button is it just looks for the bare minimum information. So name, date of birth, address, contact details, and then it asks you to code it. So department and handler. So the quick launch or quick load is a quick way of doing that. But note, it's only suitable for personal lines customers. It's not suitable for companies. Okay, so if you want to use it or load a company, make sure you click new and tick client as a firm and go down that road. And finally, then you have a client portfolio. So if you click select one of your options here and click client portfolio, it actually brings you directly into their client file, which is handy. So what we'll look at now is actually a client file. So if we actually go into a client file, now again, we do have the options that I described there earlier in terms of finding a customer. But note as well, if you click on file, if you look down on the left hand side here, you actually see the last 15 client codes that you're actually in. So this is another kind of fast way of getting back into client files. So click on file, and then the bottom is your last 15 client codes. So again, this is the one I actually want to go into here, John B01. So if I click on it, it brings me directly into Barry Jones's client file. So this is basically what a client file looks like in Relay 360. So just to kind of talk you around this particular screen, you can see here there's a variety of tabs. At the moment, we're currently highlighted on the client tab. So the client tab essentially holds all the details of that particular customer. So name, date of birth, and address. And also you can see it's coded here at client level. So in Relay 360, you can code. We have 3 levels of coding. We have client level, and we have policy level, and we have transaction level. So this is actually the coding for the client at the moment. So I am the handler, and the department is personal lines. In this particular screen, again, you can see what they last paid. And also here in these, it says current, 1 month, 2 month. These are basically debits that are outstanding on the client's file. So total due will tell you what it's currently outstanding overall. Current is within the current month. And then 1 month, 2 months, and 3 to 6 months, and so on. So as the debt ages, it moves down the trail. So if a customer has had money outstanding for over 2 months, then you'd actually see the amount here as well as in total due. If you click onto details, you can get back into their personal details and make changes. You can see here at the moment is a common client level note. That's basically here. So I clicked on details, extra, and there's your note. So if you wanted to just put a high level note, and I mean a high level note, to mark it on a file, say for example there is a debt on the file and you don't want to do business with the customer until they pay it, this is basically where I would put that particular note. So in the details you can change the address, add phone numbers, and just basically update their personal details. Once you've made changes, just press OK, and it'll bring you back to the client's file. In terms of the bottom half of the screen, you can see here there's a list of policies. So what I'd bring your attention to first is the sequence. So as you create a quote or add a policy to a client file, it actually gets its own unique sequence number. So 001, 002, 003, and so on. The policy lines are made up of the company, the insurer, the policy type, the number, the sequence, the renewal date, and the status. Now the status is extremely important in Relay 360. Now just to give you a kind of quick overview of statuses, you can see here this top policy says temporary. That essentially means it's a quote. Okay, so the statuses, the life cycle is essentially all policies start off with a temporary status, then they'll move into new business. So that indicates it's live in its first year of business, so year 1 only. And then what happens is after you renew it every year and subsequent years, the status will stay as renewal. So they're the kind of the three main statuses that you would see in Relay. Note if you want to actually exclude certain statuses, then this is the section I would bring your attention to here. So you can actually say exclude cancel lapsed. So if you do have a lot of old policies on a client file, or you've recently migrated from SSP or OpenGI to Relay, you might actually have a lot of cancelled and lapsed policies. So if you want to just hide them, just tick that box, and any policies that have a cancelled lapsed status will disappear. Likewise, you can choose to only see those type of statuses, or exclude your temporaries, which you may not want to do because they are your quotes at the end of the day. They're normally what you want to access quite frequently. Likewise, you can have temporary only, and include additional information. I do recommend you have that ticked in our system because it gives you access to this column here, which is full cycle. So it's actually a quick indicator where the policy is on full cycle or not. So you can see at the moment it says no, 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 no. So none of these policies are full cycle. But it is a quick indicator to identify if it is or not. Just in terms of the buttons up here, you can see there's a statement button. A statement, if you click on it, will give you the opportunity to create a client statement. So any monies that are due, it will give you a statement. Okay. These subsequent buttons. So you can see here, this is a button you would click if you want to send an email at client level. So an email at client level, or if you want to access your notes, this is the button I would click here. Now again, this particular button, just to clarify, you can see here John B01. This is the button I would use if I wanted to put a note on a client level, so just a high level note, or I actually just want to read my notes. Okay. I wouldn't normally put a note on this particular way because if you do that, you'll put a note on a client level where we'd want to normally put it on a policy level. So to do that, you just right click on a policy and select add policy note. Again, we have another video for Relay notes if you want to have a look at that. You can ignore the button on the right. This is just for voice notes which are no longer available. Down the bottom left hand corner here, there's additional buttons, motor, home and van. So if Barry Jones is looking for a home quote, and I know he's already on the system, so I would just go directly into his client file and click on home. So it'll basically create a new home quote and store it in his file. And the same for van. In terms of the other buttons here, as you might see, SME. So this is our trades button, our SME trades button. So again, we have an EDI feature with RightWay that allows you to get a quote for liability quotes for trades, people in the trades. So that's that button there. Quotes, if you have it, allows you to store and submit risk details, submissions, commercial submissions to insurers through the quotes button. Alternatively, you could just right click on a policy line that has say commercial combined or something like that and select risk details, and it would open a commercial risk screen. The other button, this is actually a very important button in our system. So obviously we've covered the regular personal lines button, but what about other products like commercial products or travel or gadget or pet insurance? What do we do? So the other button is actually what we use to load it up. So if, for example, we were setting up a gadget insurance policy for Barry Jones here, you can see I don't have any details on the file at the moment. So if I wanted to raise up the details, I click the other button, and essentially I fill in this particular screen. So just as an example, if I was filling this in, just put in a policy number, obviously just making this up. I'll select my insurer, and yeah, again, you can just basically enter your policy. So I'm going to just pick travel insurance here. So I've put in a policy number, an insurer, and the policy type. That's all I would normally do on this particular screen. I wouldn't change the frequency, the status, or the payment type here. So I would normally not change these, Just leave them be, especially the status, because the status of the policy changes automatically when you post a premium against it. So there's no need for you to manually be clicking on statuses and changing it. If you're doing that, you're using the system wrong. This is the coding, so department and handler, and then you have the inception and renewal date. So again, if the inception date is wrong, I would fix that. There's no need to move the renewal date on to 2018 in this example, because when we post a premium on the system, it'll automatically move on a year. So assuming that the policy starts today, I just leave that be. I can put in additional details here in terms of the amounts, like the gross and the commission rate and charge and so on, but I'm going to get a chance to do that in the next screen as well when I post a premium. So it's up to yourself. You can store that information here and it'll carry forward when you go to post the premium, or you can just leave it blank. Press OK. System will ask you, do you want to add in any additional details in the text tab? So yes or no. I'll just say I don't. I just want to continue on. And you can see here now the travel line is now created and it's a temporary status. So I've used the other button to do that. So the other button is very important. The premium button is how we post the premium. Again, we don't have to use this particular button. We could just right click on a policy line, select post premium, and that would allow me to post a new business premium because the status is currently temporary. So you've got the premium button, or you can right click. Same for cash. So when you're receipting money on the client's file, you can use the cash button if there's a debit on the system, or you can right click and select post cash. I do normally recommend for users to get into the habit of using the right click in Relay 360 because when you do that, you literally have nearly every option you would want in terms of an action is available on the right click. So that's what I would recommend. And it's also important because when you're raising a note on a file or you want to send an email, you want to do it at policy level, not client level. So on the right click, if you use this feature, then the system will automatically add notes and or emails at policy level. So just as an example here, you can see here this travel policy, the sequence is 005. If I click add policy note, the system will create a note at policy level for 005. Had I just used the note option over here, it's only at client level. So that's why the right click is very important. The journal button is something that's not actually available on at the right click. The journal button is something we use to correct an account. Okay, so maybe for example you have cancelled a policy, they're in credit, and you want to issue a refund. The journal button, just as an example, you would use it in that case to clear off the monies, because the accounts should always balance at the end of the day. They should be back to zero one way or the other. So the journal button is what we use to help clean up a client file. Okay. In terms of other buttons that you have available here, you have letter button. So letter button is something that we use if you want to create a quote pack or maybe just a one-off letter. So if I click on the letter button here, I can get into my relay letters if you have these set up. And again, if I want to do, say, a motor quote, I just click on print pack and quote issue motor. And if I double click, then the system will give me an opportunity to create a letter, a motor quote letter. So what I'm going to do now is just in terms of the, I'm just going to post a premium up on the system here for this. So what I'm going to do now is just post a premium up on the system. So if I just select the first policy line and premium, or again I can right click and just quickly selecting some details. I just want to post up a premium to show you the invoice button. So I'm after posting up a new business premium here against line number 1. Because I've done that, I can now use the invoice button if I want to create, say, a confirmation of cover pack. So if I click on the invoice button, the system will actually select the correct pack for me. It does that through the mapping rules that can be built into Relay. If you don't have these set up, you can contact a customer support and they'll help you do it. But essentially it's up here in system and maintain letter mapping. If you actually go in here, you can assign rules. So you, again, for example, if you want to, if you're confirming a renewal for motor, you can tell the system which letter or pack you want to open or to be assigned when you use the invoice button. So you can help, you can map your letters and your packs to help speed up the process. So you can see here on the line number 1, I have a debit of 350 set up. So if I actually just click the invoice button, the system automatically knows to give me the confirmation of cover pack for motor because I have that in my letter mapping rules. Press OK, and the system will generate the letter. Note as well that if the mapped pack is not the one you actually want in that particular case, say for example you just wanted an invoice, you didn't want a full pack, just click change letter, print pack, and just go to your relevant invoice. And just double click on that one. So that's the letter and the invoice button. The schedule button is something that we would use for commercial policies when you want to actually create submissions. So if you're in a company file, and this would be covered on a separate video, but if you're in a company file and you just created a quote for say commercial combined and you filled in the risk details, you'll be able to actually create a schedule and a submission and then email it off to an insurer. Next one is the history button. So the history button actually stores all the EDI history on a client's file. So after you set up a policy or do an MTA or do a renewal at EDI, through EDI, it'll be stored in the history section. So if you go into one of your files that has an EDI transaction, click history, you'll actually see it. The history button is quite good because you can actually compare a new business risk details against that of a midterm adjustment. So you can actually highlight the two of them and click compare, and you can compare and contrast the risk details. So that's a way of actually seeing what changes might have been made on a client's file, the history button, but it is only for EDI. On the bottom right hand corner you have client search. So again, you can see here it's the same client code, but if you quickly want to grab this or copy it, you can do so from here. So if you're using the Outlook integration as an example, because when you use Outlook integration you want to bring in an email directly into a client's file, you want to copy and paste the client code into the Outlook integration migration screen. Clicking next will bring you into the next sequence. So if there was a JONB02, that's the next one it will bring me into, and again previously it'll bring me into whatever the alphabetical client file that was previous. So we looked at the client tab earlier, just to clarify the other tabs that are available within a client's file. So the client tab is the personal details. The policy tab, so if you select one of these policies and select policy, it gives you a summary of the policy details. Alternatively, you could just right click and select policy details. Diary tab will store any diaries that you've raised on a client file. So as you may well be aware, in Relay you can raise diaries to remind you to do something or to chase up on documentation. So if you're not using diary, you can just click new and you basically select if the diary is about the client or about a particular policy, what type of diary it is. Again, if you're just chasing the customer, say for money or for upload a quote, you can select normal. This is today's date, and that's the action date. This is the date you want to be reminded to call the customer. So you can change the date manually, or you just basically put in, say, 7 days and tab, and the system will automatically change it. In the reference tab, this is your reference. This is you are the user, your Windows user, and then also you can select or have the option to select any of your other colleagues who are using Relay, basically assign diaries to them. In here, this is where you can put in a little note. Press OK, and the diary comes in. You can access your diary at any time, go into File, and use a diary. Accounts tab. The Accounts tab, and again I'm just clicking the More button here just to blow this up a little bit, is a summary of all transactions between you and the client. So new business, MTAs, renewals, any financial transactions between you and the client will be stored here in the Accounts tab. Note that you can double click on any of these to give you some more information on the particular transaction. So just double clicking on them. Also clicking on transactions here will actually give you a summary screen with all of the transactions that have ever taken place on the file. Again, there's a date range search, so if you want to check a particular time period, you can use the date range, or alternatively you can use source or transaction type as a way to narrow it down. There is other viewing options on the bottom here. Also, you can just right click at any stage and select export to Excel. Just pull the whole thing out into a spreadsheet. Documents. This is where all of your documentations are stored on a client file. You can see here at the moment options, it says any item, which will give you everything. But if you wanted to see just documentation in relation to a particular policy, you could just select the policy down the bottom here and just select policy. And the system will just display any documentation that is associated with that particular policy. So you would have had to associate it with that policy in the first place, just to clarify. If you want to bring it back, just click any item. Just in terms of documentation, an alternative way of actually viewing documents is to use Combine View. So those who are not familiar with Combine View, if you just right click on a policy line and select Combine View, it's actually at the base just outside of your screen that you can see here. It's called Combine View, and this is basically a summary of all documentation that's in the client file. You can see it defaults to the policy that I right clicked on, but I could just select all policies and it gives me everything. Combine View is great. It gives you all notes, diaries, emails, documentation about each policy that you have on the client file. Again, we have another video on Combine View and document management which you may want to refer to. Claims. If you are using the claims function in Relay, and again most clients would use it say for commercial business, then this is where their claims will be stored. So if you click on the new button here, it'll give you the opportunity to load up details of the claim and track it. It's worthwhile putting a claim onto it, onto Relay, because again you can actually index any documentation or emails to specific claims within our system, and it actually has its own Combine View system, so that you can see all documentation and emails specifically in relation to each claim, but the claim has to be loaded up on the system to begin with. The company tab, it's similar to the accounts tab, but it just gives you all transactions between you and the insurers, so the actual companies themselves. So normally fees aren't included here in the company tab. So whilst you have monies outstanding with an insurer, they'll be sitting here. So once you reconcile and run a month end, they'll clear down. Again, it has its own transactions button, so you just click it, you're back into your transactions, and again you can double click to mine down on any particular transaction. On the bottom right hand corner you have client search. So again you can see here it's the same client code, but if you quickly want to grab this or copy it, you can do so from here. So if you're using the Outlook integration as an example, because when you use Outlook integration you want to bring in an email directly into a client's file, you want to copy and paste the client code into the Outlook integration migration screen. Clicking next will bring you into the next sequence. So if there was a JONB02, that's the next one it will bring me into, and again previously it'll bring me into whatever the alphabetical client file that was previous. If you want to just get out of the client file and go back to your home page, just click exit and reset, and you're back. And that concludes this video. Thank you.